So we know how to describe the rate or speed of a reaction with the rate law. That's only part of the story. Scientists want to figure out how a reaction occurs, which is the sequence of steps by which bonds break and form going from reactants to products. This is called the reaction mechanism. Understanding a mechanism helps the scientist develop and design better chemicals, such as drugs, make them work better. A reaction mechanism is the sequence of steps by which bonds break and form going from reactants to products. Each step is called an elemental step. Adding all the elemental steps together gives the overall reaction. Here's an example. I can describe how I get from home to Chem 1B lecture by this overall reaction. The mechanism consists of 4 elemental steps. Adding the 4 elemental steps gives the overall reaction. Each elemental step occurs at a different rate or speed. Stop the video and identify which step is the slowest step. And the answer is, the slowest step is called the rate determining step. How do we determine the reaction mechanism of a reaction? The answer is the rate law, specifically the order of the reaction with respect to each reactant, which tells us the number of reactant particles that are involved in the rate determining step. Here's an example. Let's say A reacts with B to form products. Experiments show that the reaction is first order with respect to A and second order with respect to B. This means 1 particle of A and 2 particles of B are involved in the rate determining step. This also means the overall order of the reaction is third order. So in a hypothetical reaction, A plus B going to products, 1 particle of A has to collide with 2 particles of B for this reaction to occur. Now I'm sure you've played pool before. All those billiard balls moving and colliding are like a chemical reaction. A reaction occurs when atoms or molecules or particles collide with sufficient energy for bonds to break and form. Stop the video and speculate on what is the highest possible overall reaction order. Here's how we get to an answer. How probable or likely is it for 2 balls to collide on the table? Pretty high. What about 3 balls colliding at the same spot at the same time? The probability is lower. How about 4 balls colliding? Even lower. 5 balls colliding? Unlikely. Nitric oxide, NO, is involved in quite a few processes. It is produced in combustion reactions in car engines as one of the NOx pollutants. It is the molecule that relaxes heart muscle tissue when a heart patient is given nitroglycerin. It's also involved in a very popular drug to relax another type of muscle tissue. In this reaction, nitric oxide reacts with chlorine. Here is the experimentally determined rate law. Stop the video and answer this question. And the answer is, this means that 2 particles, one NO and one Cl2, are involved in the rate determining step of the reaction mechanism. Here is a reaction mechanism that's been proposed for this reaction. Note that it consists of 2 elemental steps. We can write a rate law for each elemental step based on the coefficients in the balanced chemical equation. Stop the video and answer this question. Does the rate law of either elemental step match the experimentally determined rate law? If your answer is yes, the rate law of the elemental step that matches the experimentally determined rate law is the rate determining step in the reaction mechanism. Nitric oxide is produced by high-flying aircraft and destroys the ozone. Ozone is the chemical in our upper atmosphere which blocks ultraviolet radiation from the sun. Here is the rate law for this reaction and 4 possible mechanisms. Stop the video and identify which mechanism best fits the data. And the answer is mechanisms 2 and 4 fit the experimental rate law. We would have to do experiments to see which mechanism is the actual mechanism. The iodine clock reaction is a reaction in which 2 colorless solutions are mixed together. Then, after a certain period of time, the solution all of a sudden turns blue. We did this reaction in lab 3. Here is the rate law for this reaction. Stop the video, review these 3 mechanisms, and determine which mechanism fits the rate law. And the answer is, the first elemental steps in mechanisms B and C matches the experimental rate law. But the sum of the 3 elemental steps in mechanism B does not equal the overall reaction, whereas the 2 elemental steps in mechanism C does equal the overall reaction. So mechanism C is the most likely mechanism. The 3 factors that determine the rate of reaction are temperature, concentration, and a catalyst. We've already discussed temperature and concentration. Stop the video and review the properties of a catalyst. You probably have some hydrogen peroxide at home and use it as a disinfectant. When you apply hydrogen peroxide to disinfect a cut, here's what you see happen. Hydrogen peroxide is decomposing with the help of the peroxidase enzyme catalyst. Here is the hydrogen peroxide decomposition reaction. The bubbles are from oxygen. This is the rate law and mechanism for the hydrogen peroxide decomposition reaction without a catalyst. Using an iodide catalyst, this is the rate law and mechanism for the hydrogen peroxide decomposition reaction. Note that the rate laws are different as well as the mechanisms. The catalyst is involved in the mechanism and is regenerated at the end of the reaction. When we add the elemental steps for the mechanism with the catalyst, we get the overall reaction, which does not include iodide, the catalyst. A catalyst makes the reaction go faster by lowering the activation energy for the reaction. Compare the activation energies for the hydrogen peroxide decomposition reaction without a catalyst to the decomposition reaction using the catalase enzyme catalyst. By calculating the ratio of the rate constants for the catalyzed versus uncatalyzed reaction, we see that the catalyzed reaction is 3 times 10 to the 7th or 30 million times faster than the uncatalyzed reaction. These biological catalysts, the enzymes, are very important in our body. For example, it would take 300 years to digest a steak in our stomach without enzymes. We just saw that the catalase enzyme increases the rate of the hydrogen peroxide decomposition reaction by 10 to the 7th. Some enzymes make reactions go 10 to the 20th times faster. Here's another biological catalyst. When we drink alcohol, which is ethanol, our body uses an enzyme to convert the ethanol to acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde is very toxic to our body, so a second enzyme converts the acetaldehyde to acetic acid or vinegar. The problem is there's only a limited amount of that second enzyme, so if a person drinks too much, not all of the acetaldehyde gets converted to acetic acid. It's the acetaldehyde that causes a hangover. The catalytic converter in our car uses platinum as the catalyst. It's called a three-way catalyst because it does 3 things. It will convert unburned hydrocarbons to CO2 and water. It will convert carbon monoxide, which is poisonous, to carbon dioxide. And it will convert the NOx pollutants to N2 gas. This picture shows some of the reactions that occur at the surface of the platinum catalyst. The mechanism is complicated. Since before the 21st century, many people believe hydrogen is the fuel of the 21st century. The problem is generating hydrogen economically. This catalyst generates 3 molecules of hydrogen from methanol and water. This picture shows how the catalyst is involved in the mechanism of the reaction. We use a lot of plastics. Chemical companies figured out inexpensive ways to generate different types of plastics using different catalysts. Carbonic acid is one of the acids in soda and carbonated beverages. Here is the activation energy for this reaction and the half-life. Because of its long half-life, astronomers are thinking of looking for carbonic acid in deep space.